Okay, so let's start again. So I've been talking for the previous hour about settings where players form coalitions that may or may not engage in specific activities. Now let me zoom in on a very specific case where players form pairs, right? And this is a setting that is usually called stable matching. Okay, so let me formally define the stable matching problem. In stable matching problem, as it's usually defined, we have a set of men, we have a set of women. So same size, same number of men, same number of women, say n. Right? And participants rank members of opposite sex. Right? So this is the setting when players have preferences over each other. Right? And these preferences are not numeric but rankings. So it's slightly different from what we discussed so far, but sort of fits into the general framework of players caring about each other's company. Okay, so let's say that each man lists women in the order of preference from best to worst. So here we have three guys, I, J, K, Ian, John, and Kyle. And here each of the guys ranks women in his order of preference. Right? So this order may be different from one guy to another, so we don't assume that there's kind of one universal order of women. Right? So guys have their individual preferences. So similarly, women have their individual preferences. Right? So Amy ranks John above Ian above Kyle. Bella prefers Ian to John to Kyle. Well, no one likes Kyle, but well, so that's what we have. Right? So everyone has a preference order. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to match those people. We want to match these men and women, and we want to match them in a nice way. So first, let me define perfect matching. Perfect matching, it sounds like a strong term, but it's actually not saying much. So perfect matching first is a set of ordered pairs so that each man appears in at most one pair, each woman appears in at most one pair. Right? So these men and women are really matched to each other. Right? So it can be a subset, not everyone has to be matched. But yeah, so this is saying that these guys with this woman, these guys with this woman, right? So you can think of it as a matching in the respective bipartite graph. And we say that such a matching is perfect if everyone is matched. If the number of pairs is equal to the number of men equal to the number of women. So a perfect matching here would be, well, there are two ways to represent it. For each guy, I can tell you which woman he's matched to. So Ian is matched to Claire, John to Bella, Kyle to Amy. Right? Or I can also represent it by saying for each woman who she's matched to. So Amy to Kyle, Bella to John, Claire to Ian. Right? So that's the same matching, just written differently. Okay, so that's a perfect matching. So when I say perfect, I don't imply to say that it's good. When I say perfect, I only imply to say that everyone is matched. Okay, so now what does it mean to have a good matching? Well, let me first say what it means to have a bad matching. So what can make a matching bad? A matching is bad if there is an unstable pair. A pair is unstable if there is a man and a woman who look at each other, then look at their current partners and say, well, we'd rather be together than with our current partners. We both prefer each other to our current partners. Right? And if that happens, this pair is unstable and they may elope, thereby breaking our matching. Right? So we want the matching, right? So, and if that happens, our matching is unstable, so it's not good. Right? So here, for instance, in this example, so what is an unstable pair? So Bella and Ian. So why is that? Ian here prefers Bella to his current partner, to Claire. Right? And Bella as well prefers Ian to her current partner, John. Right? So they form an unstable pair. So no other unstable pairs. So what is the easiest way to say it? Well, both John and Kyle get the most preferred partner, so they cannot be a part of this deviating pair. They're as happy as they can possibly be. So the only deviating guy can be Ian. Well, so Ian can deviate. Okay, so in fact, no. So there's another possibility. So Ian can also deviate with Amy. Right? So Amy would also prefer Ian to his current partner. Right? So Ian is in a position to deviate, so there can be two possible deviating pairs. Okay. So we say stable matching problem is to find a matching that is perfect, everyone is matched, that has no unstable pairs. So here, for instance, this matching, Ian to Amy, John to Bella, Kyle to Claire is stable. Okay, so why is it stable? Well, again, by the same argument, right? So Ian, so the argument we sort of just attempted. Ian is as happy as he can be. So he gets his most preferred partner. John, same thing. Kyle doesn't get his most preferred partner, but no one likes Kyle, right? As we established, no one likes Kyle, right? So he's ranked last, so neither Amy nor Bella want to debate with him, right? So this is stable. Okay, so the question we want to ask, okay, do these things exist Okay, so first, okay, so I've been talking about hedonic games for an hour. Does it remind you of a hedonic game? Right, so normally when people speak of stable matchings, right, they speak of it as a completely separate problem with a different list of applications, but actually this is a hedonic game. So why is it a hedonic game? Well, because players have preference over possible collisions. So what are the possible collisions here? Possible collisions are pairs, and not just any pair. Okay, so first set of players. Players are both men and women, so the set of player has size 2n. The preferences are like this, right? So each player, each man prefers to be in a pair with a woman, to being alone, to be in a pair of size more than 2, or to be in a pair of size 1. Right, sort of the only acceptable pairs are pairs of size 2. So every pair of size 2 involving a partner of opposite sex is preferred to any other collision. Right, so for both for men and for women. Right, and preference over such pairs, preferences over pairs of the form men-woman, is defined by his actual preferences over the opposite sex, his or her. Right, so the guy prefers every collision of this form to being alone, or to be or being in a large collision, or being in a collision with another guy. And his preferences are determined by his preference over women. Right, so now stable matching here corresponds to an outcome in the core. Right, so think about it again. So what does it mean for an outcome to be, for a partition to be in the core? It means that no one wants to deviate. Right, so what are the potential deviations here? Deviations can only be towards desirable pairs. Right, desirable pairs are pairs man-woman. Right, so if you think what it means for this pair to deviate, kind of in the sense that we just defined, right, so to be an unstable pair, right, so that's exactly the definition of the core, right, so they both prefer this potential new collision to the current collision, right, so this is a question of core stability in this specific class of games, right, so what we are going to show now is that in this class of games, the core is always non-empty, right, and, okay, so before I even attempt to show you that, okay, so some of you may have this objection, right? So why are we so focused on this, men-woman pairs, right? Wouldn't it be more progressive to allow same-sex marriage, right? And sort of not insist that pairs are necessarily of the opposite sex. Well, it may be more progressive, but if we allow ourselves this more general model, then we are not going to have stability, right? Okay, now this is not a political statement, right? This is a technical statement, right? I certainly don't want to make any political statements in this audience, right? I don't want to get myself into trouble one way or other, right? But the technical statement is like this. So suppose we don't have this restriction that players can only be matched with a person of the opposite sex. So let's say that players have preference over all possible pairs, right? So we still don't allow sort of these, collisions of size 3 or more, because that's really awkward, right? Right, so I am getting myself into trouble, right? So we say that preferences should be over pairs, right? And because we don't say that they should be over opposite sex, let's sort of get sex out of the picture. Let's just say that these are all people of the same sex. They're all just guys who are looking for dorm roommates, right? So all possible roommates are technically feasible, right? And you have preferences over those roommates, right? So this is what's known as stable roommate problem. In stable roommate problem, you have a still even number of people, say all of the same sex for convenience. Each person ranks others from 1 to 2n minus 1. Right, and we want to assign roommate pairs so that there are no unstable pairs in the same sense. There are no two guys who would rather be roommates with each other than with their current roommates. Right, and here I cannot guarantee you a stable outcome. So in stable matching, we are going to prove that there will always be a stable outcome. Here there won't be. And here's a very simple example. So I'll give you an example, then we'll try to reason together why there is no stable partition into pairs. So we have 4 guys. And again, so we have this one guy, this time Dan, D, whom no one likes, right? And other guys have, well, preferences of some sort, right? But no one likes Dan. So I claim that here there is no stable partition, right? So partition here would be a partition into pairs. So how can we try to see that? Well, okay, so we can do it by enumeration. Okay, so first sanity check, how many possible partitions are here? How many possible kind of different partitions are here? 6 if you take into account the rooms they're assigned to. But if we don't care about that, then fundamentally 3. Right? So this guy Dan can be matched with Adam, Bob, or Chris. Right? So once we decided that the other pair is determined. Right? So basically just 3 possibilities. And we could go over all three of them and check that none of them is stable, but there's a slightly more intuitive way of explaining it. Okay, think about this guy, Dan, whom no one likes. So he has so suppose we have a stable outcome. So we'll argue kind of to get a contradiction. So we have a stable outcome. There's some hapless guy, one of Adam, Bob, and Chris, who is assigned to be a roommate with Dan. He doesn't like Dan. He'd rather be with someone else. Right? So we don't know who that is, right? That's a possibility. We don't know who that is, but he's assigned to Dan. So another thing to pay attention to is that everyone is someone's favorite roommate. Bob is Adam's favorite roommate. Chris is Bob's favorite roommate. Adam is Chris's favorite roommate. Okay, so why does it, how can we use that to conclude that kind of our solution is unstable? Would be someone else's favorite roommate, right? So he's unhappy because he's with Dan, right? And there's this guy who would really like to be with this person, roommate with this person, right? So they together can deviate. One guy is abandoning Dan, the other guy is going for his favorite roommate, so that's a positive deviation, right? Or you can do case analysis. Okay, so if we have stable roommates, we are not guaranteed a stable solution, but if we actually have this man-woman setting, then we have a stable solution. And moreover, the stable solution can actually be found efficiently by a very simple and natural algorithm. So let me tell you what the algorithm is. So this is an algorithm. As its input, it takes preference lists of men and women. It constructs a set of pairs sort of iteratively. So it starts with an empty set of pairs. So the way it works is while some guy is unmatched and has not yet proposed to every woman, so we do the following. So we take some unmatched guy and send him out in the big wide world to propose. So he goes out and proposes to the most preferred woman he hasn't proposed to yet. Right, so the guy, so maybe he's been out for a while, he proposed to some women, he got rejected by them, presumably, right? But there are some women whom he hasn't tried to propose. So he goes out and proposes. Okay, so what happens now? The woman has to decide, right? So what do women do? Well, if the woman is currently unmatched, she says, okay, I don't want to be unmatched, so whoever is proposing to me, I'm going to accept him provisionally, right? And provisionally means that she's happy to be matched with him for now until maybe something better comes along, right? So this is literally what she says. So for now, I accept you. So man and woman are provisionally matched. So the other possibility, and that's the interesting one, if the woman is currently matched to someone, what does she do? She has a current partner, she has a proposal. She compares the two, and then she chooses the better one. If she prefers her current partner, so she looks at the new proposal and says, well, thanks, but no thanks, I like my current guy. If she actually prefers the new proposer, she dumps her current partner, who then becomes unmatched, right? The matching was provisional to start with, right? So he's been dumped now, right? And she's now matched with this new guy who just proposed, right? So this is how the algorithm works. So the rejected guy, so either the proposer who got rejected because she preferred her current partner or her former partner goes to the pool of unmatched guys and may be chosen to select to propose in the next round, in future rounds, right? Okay, so this is how the algorithm works, right? So this is how one round of the algorithm works. In one round, one man proposes to one woman, right? So he may or may not be accepted. If he accepted, that may mean that another guy is rejected. Okay, so that's the algorithm, and we stop when kind of this while condition is no longer satisfied, right? So if we don't have an unmatched guy who yet hasn't proposed to every woman, right? So when we stop, okay, so we can stop when there are no unmatched guys, or we can stop if there is an unmatched guy who already has proposed to every woman, and so every woman rejected him. Okay, so that's the description of the algorithm. Okay, so I actually have a demo which I haven't downloaded yet, but if my Dropbox is still open, so okay, so anyway, so even if it's not, okay, so I can do it quickly enough. So it's a demo that is worth looking at. Not a robot, I promise. What did I open? so the wrong one. So let me go back to the analysis. So maybe maybe I can show it after the break. So we'll have another short break. So as part of the tutorial, I can show that, but I'd rather not bother now. Okay. So this is the algorithm. So guys propose. Okay. So what are the obvious questions to ask? So why does it algorithm even terminate? Right? Why can't it loop forever? Right? So it may happen that at each iteration, some guy gets rejected, goes back to the pool. Right? So we haven't progressed somehow. Right? So again, we have an unmatched guy. So the number of matched guys didn't increase. So why does the algorithm even terminate? How can we argue that? Right. So a guy is not allowed to propose to a woman twice, so they go down the list of women. Right, so if a guy runs out of women to propose, he's no longer eligible. So the total number of rounds is at most n the number of guys times the number of women, n squared. Right, so they propose to women in decreasing order of preference, right, and that actually gives us termination. Right, so a guy cannot propose to a woman twice. So second observation, which is actually very interesting, so once a woman is matched, she never becomes unmatched, and she only trades up. Right, so if you think about it, so the guy's position throughout the execution of the algorithm only gets worse. Right, so at the very first step, maybe a guy proposes to his most preferred woman, and he's lucky, he's provisionally matched to her, but if she rejects him, he has to go down his preference list. Right, so his provisional matching only gets worse. For women, the situation is the opposite. So she starts out being unmatched, and her first proposal is, well, whoever came along. But from then on, if your partner changes, he only changes for the better. Right, because this is her choice. He only changes the partner if the new partner is better than the old one. So women only trade up, and by the execution of the algorithm, they cannot become unmatched. They never go from being matched to being unmatched. Okay, so first, so Gale-Shapley terminates after at most n squared iteration of the while loop. Right, so we established that. Right, and second, okay, so here's the interesting part. So I claim that Gale-Shapley actually gives us a perfect matching. That we won't have this, unmatched guy sticking around after having proposed to a woman. Right, so it cannot be the case that a guy is rejected by all women. Okay, why is that? Well, we have the same number of men and women. Right, so exactly the same number. So if we have an unmatched guy, we have an unmatched woman. Right? So what about that unmatched woman? So let's think about this guy M and this woman W. So M is unmatched, right, at the end of the algorithm, meaning he has proposed to everyone. So in particular, he has proposed to this lady W. What happens then? Well, maybe she accepted his proposal, right? But then at that point she got matched and maybe traded up so couldn't become unmatched. Maybe he rejected his proposal. She rejected his proposal. How could she reject his proposal? Because she was matched to someone better. So she was matched then as well. So it means that if this guy is unmatched, it's because W was matched at some point. Right? So that's an impossibility. Right? So therefore, at the end of the algorithm, everyone is matched. So at least, it's perfect matching. It's not obvious from the description of the algorithm, but at least it actually produces perfect matching. Okay, so why is it stable? So why is this outcome actually in the core? Why is there no eloping pair? Right? And that's again not a difficult argument. So let's consider a pair, a potential eloping pair, a pair that is not currently matched to each other, a guy and a woman. Right? And let's ask ourselves, okay, so they're not in the matching, they're not matched to each other. So how come they're not in the matching? Okay, so one possibility is that the man never proposed to this woman. So what does it mean with regards to W and his current partner? He likes the current partner better, right? Because he was going down to his preference list. He never got to the point when he proposed to the W. Therefore, he stopped earlier, right? And he stopped earlier as he was going down, so he stopped at his current partner. So therefore, his current partner must be better. Therefore, he doesn't want to deviate with W, right? So he prefers his current partner to W. Therefore, in that case, MW is not a possible deviation. Okay, so the other possibility is M actually proposed to W in the past. What could have happened? Well, maybe she rejected him immediately when he proposed, right? This means that she had a better partner at that time, and women only trade up. So in the end, she has a still better partner than him, right? Okay. Right, the other possibility is, right, so the other possibility is, so she provisionally accepted him and then rejected him. But again, she rejected him because she got a chance to be matched with someone better, and then she traded up from that point on. Right? So still currently she is matched to someone who is better than M. Right? So in either case, right? So in the case when M proposed to W, right? So this means that because they are now not together, W rejected him, so she is now with someone better. Right? And therefore M and W are not an unstable pair. Right? So one way or the M, W are not an unstable pair. Right? So and we made that argument for any pair that is not in the current matching. Right? So any man and any woman who is not currently matched actually don't want to elope. Right? And therefore our matching is stable. Okay, good. Okay. So this is a simple algorithm with simple analysis. Right? So the algorithm fits into one slide. The analysis fits into, well, each property fits into one slide. Termination is easy, kind of perfection is easy, stability is easy. Now, this algorithm won a Nobel Prize. Okay, actually, it's even more interesting, right? So this is the theorem. Gale-Shapley algorithm terminates after order and squared iterations and finds a stable matching for any problem instance. So here's a history. This algorithm was proposed by two guys, none of whom was a computer scientist. So David Gale was a operations researcher, Lloyd Shapley was a game theorist. Right? So they proposed this algorithm and published it in Mathematical Journal. Right? Okay, so it's an algorithm published in Mathematical Journal. It's a mathematical journal of the sort, kind of general interest mathematical journal. Not where you publish your fancier papers, but sort of, general interest papers. And they mostly presented it as a math puzzle. So how did math puzzle, kind of algorithm that is effectively a math puzzle, end up winning a Nobel Prize? Well, Nobel Prize was won in 2012 by Shapley and Alvin Earth for the theory of stable allocations and the practice of market design. Okay, so first, why not David Gale? Well, Gale was dead by then. Nobel Prizes are only given to living people. Okay, so why L. Earth, who wasn't a co-author here? Well, so the Nobel Prize citation says theory of stable allocations and the practice of market design. So theory of stable allocations are the 4 slides I showed you, and that's Gale and Shapley. Practice of market design is L. Earth. Right, and we are now going to talk a little bit about practice, about how this algorithm actually impacted practice in a huge way. Okay, before we do that though, yes, I want to boast. So this is me and Lloyd Shapley, kind of few years before he got the Nobel Prize. So I knew back then, right, so that he's the guy that is going to get Nobel Prize. Okay, so he was my hero because of some of the other work he has done. So I want to take a picture with him. So that's a picture at the Game Theory Congress in 2008. So Shapley was actually pretty frail by then already. So he did some of his groundbreaking work in 51. So you can guess, well, he wasn't a young guy. So sadly, he died a couple of years ago. Right, so 2012, he was still alive. So he gave a nice Nobel Prize acceptance speech. But yeah, he is no longer with us. Okay, so why is it interesting? Well, let's talk a little bit about flexibility of this algorithm and how robust it is. Right, robustness is something we generally want in the algorithms world. Right, so our algorithm should work not just in the specific narrow setting we described it for, but hopefully it should be flexible enough to describe to a broader range of scenarios. And this is something that we have in spades with Gale-Shapley algorithm. Okay, so first possibility, many-to-one matchings. Right, and that would be matching medical school students to hospitals. So the setup here is that, okay, so once medical students graduate from university, they have to do an internship at a hospital. Right? So now students have preferences over hospitals, right? So these preferences may depend on the location of the hospital, on the available of specific specialties, on kind of on prestige, on location, right? So maybe no one wants to Iowa. Okay, so why is it many-to-one? Well, because a hospital typically looks to hire several interns, right? So a hospital has several spaces, but an intern can only go to one hospital. Okay. So why is it like really preferential statements? I talked about students' preferences. Hospitals have preferences over students. You might think that these are just test scores, but it's actually more complicated than that, because hospitals actually interview students, and those final preferences are based on interviews just as test scores. Right? Okay, so you can see that this is also relevant, say, for admissions to IITs, but as it has been explained to me, admissions to IITs have the feature that one site has completely uninteresting preferences. Right, so students may actually have preferences over universities and specialties, but universities actually just rank students according to test scores and don't take anything else into account. Right, so it's sort of an instance, but it's a degenerate instance. Right, so this is more interesting because hospitals have non-trivial preferences. So another example would be matching children to schools. right? So when some schools are known to be better than other, right? So it's also many to one. A child goes to one school, but a school typically has a lot of places, right? Okay, so what is stability in this setting? Well, there should be no pair as x, y, such that x is a school, y is a student, such that we have the following. Y is not admitted to school x, yet X would prefer Y over one of its current students, over someone who was admitted. Y prefers X to her current, and Y prefers X to her current school. Right, so that would be an example of instability. Right, and the fact is that Gale-Shapley extends very smoothly to this setting. Right, either with students proposing or schools proposing. Right, so you can make the choice of who plays the role of men, who plays the role of women. Right, and what you do, how do you handle multiple slots? But you sort of adapt it in a very natural way, and it works. So think of it, I think, as students proposing to schools, and schools kind of accepting students, kind of as long as they have slots, and kicking out kind of the weakest current student if they have a better proposal. Right, so that would be Gale-Shapley for this setting, and it also produces a stable assignment. Okay, so why is this hugely important? Well, this is because how matching of residents to medical schools is actually done currently. And before Gale-Shapley algorithm was, at least in many countries, I'm not sure about India, but in the States, in United Kingdom, in Israel, in a bunch of other places. So I don't know about India, possibly here as well. Right, and before that was done, right, so hospitals used to have a greedy algorithm to recruit interns, and this greedy algorithm was not stable, and instability actually was a major issue in practice. Right, after the assignment was out, after the hospitals have sent out their letters and kind of accepted decisions were made, right, so a student and the hospital could identify this mutually beneficial deviation, right, and then they would actually deviate because there was no system in place to prevent them from doing so, right, and then the whole system would unravel because suddenly, the hospital abandoned by the student has a free spot, so they try to recruit someone else, right, and there was this kind of post-market recruitment process that was actively harming everyone. Right, so that was inefficient and sad, and this assignment, kind of hospitals started doing this assignment like a full year before the end of medical school to have time to deal with consequences, right, and this phenomenon is generally known as unraveling. Right, so kind of everything was pushed back in time because of this post-market thing, and post-market thing was becoming more and more elaborate. Right, and introduction of Gale-Shapley algorithm effectively resolved that. Because once it was introduced, kind of there was no post-market interaction because there was no unstable pairs. Right, and the same with school admissions. So with school admissions, it's an ongoing effort to get school districts to convert to a variant of Gale-Shapley as opposed to greedy. So I'm afraid this isn't done for the school district where my son's school is located. Right, so there is actually, so potentially there could be some instability there. I'm not aware of any instances, but certainly in Boston and New York, there were issues with kind of unstable kind of school-student pairs that were eliminated by introducing Gale-Shapley. Right, and these are like tangible economic benefits, so something that really does deserve Nobel Prize. Okay, so one more extension that is important for handling the things in practice, right, and that's unacceptable pairs. Right, so what are those? Well, some men may. So when I was presenting Gale-Shapley, perhaps some of you wondered how come everyone is willing to be matched with anyone, right? Real life typically is not like that. Right, so in the context of medical students, right, so maybe, okay, a student has preference over medical schools, but maybe they're not willing to move to the other end of the country. Maybe they're not willing to take a specific hospital because it's somehow just too inconvenient for them. Right, so there may be some unacceptable pairs. Right, and if you have unacceptable pairs, of course, we are not guaranteed to end up with perfect matching, but we may still talk about stability. Okay, and potentially even the number of students in slot need not be equal. Right, and again, that's, if we have that, right, so then we are not guaranteed perfection. Perfection doesn't make sense. We can still talk about stability. So what does stability mean in this setting? Well, there should be no pair, x, y, where x is a school and y is a student, such that we have following. So y is not admitted to x, right, so they're not together at the moment. Y and x find each other acceptable, right, so that's the minimum requirement. And then x either has a free slot or prefers y to one of its current students, so x can take on y, right? And similarly, y is either unmatched or prefers x to her current school, right? So that would be an instability situation, right? And what Gale-Shapley does in this setting, it still works for this setting and finds a stable matching. Stable need not be perfect, but it finds a stable matching. Right? So again, so it has to be tweaked a little bit to take these things into account, but this tweak's actually minimal and it still works. So some flavor of Gale-Shapley still works and gives you a stable matching. Okay, so another extension, again, talking about in practice. Well, preferences may have ties, right? So even if a student applicant has preferences over all possible IITs and all possible specialties in those IITs, right? So IIT would be indifferent between two students happen to have the same test score, right? So this happens. Or in the case of school admissions, right? So we are now talking primary school admission, right? My son just turned 5, right? So they don't test them as young, right? I don't know. So maybe here they do, in UK they don't, right? So what are school admissions based on? Okay, school admissions technically are based on the following factors. My school's son is Church of England, right? So my family is not religious, but the school is sort of loosely affiliated with Church of England, which is the state religion in the United Kingdom, right? And that allows them to discriminate at admissions. So admissions may take the following 3 factors into account. Well, okay, so the primary factor still is whether the student lives in the catchment area, close enough to the school. Right, so another factor is where they have a sibling in school. Reasoning being if a family already has one child in school, it's convenient for him to have another child in that school. Right, so children are positively discriminated if they have siblings in school. And third is this Church of England thing. Right, so if they actually belong to the church in some official registered way, that helps slightly with school admissions, slightly. So this is the least significant factor. Right, and the schools are not allowed to take any other factors into account. Right, and this is black and white, whether a student is in the catchment area or not. Right, so that partitions students into 8 possible groups. 2 possibilities here, 2 possibilities here, 2 possibilities here. And within each group, the school is indifferent. Right, so the best case is the student lives in the catchment area, already has a sibling in school, belongs to the Church of England. Right, so students like that would definitely get admitted. Right, so the next option is lives in the catchment area, has a sibling, but doesn't actually belong to the church. Right, so still good a chance, but still a very good chance, but slightly weaker. Right, and the worst possible case would be not in the catchment area, doesn't have a sibling, doesn't belong to Church of England, has no excuse for being in that school, unlikely to be admitted. Right? Okay, so there are indifferences. Within each group, the school is indifferent. So what does stability mean now? So stability now means that there should be no pair, let me now refer to them as M and W, such that they strictly prefer each other to the current partners. Right, so there may be ties, but the tie is not a reason for deviating. Right? So if there is a pair, so this is like, again, this is like core stability, right? So when we talked about hedonic games, we allowed ties there, right? So core should be a kind of a pair is a blocking pair if kind of everyone in that pair strictly prefers the new collision to the old collision, right? So this is the sort of requirement we have here. And the Gale-Shapley extends and produces kind of a weakly stable partition. Okay, so one caveat, if we simultaneously allow ties and incomplete preferences, so ties and inacceptabilities, then Gale-Shapley no longer guarantees you a stable pair. Right? But if we allow just one of these 2 things, Gale-Shapley still works. Okay, so we talked about why Gale-Shapley algorithm is important. Let me say a few more words about the properties of the solution. Okay, so first let me ask you, so how many of you have actually seen the analysis of Gale-Shapley before? No one. Okay, so then it's interesting. So let me ask you about your intuition. So suppose we have this variant of Gale-Shapley where men go out and propose to women. Do you think this is... Okay, so this part is obviously non-symmetric, right? So men versus women. Right, so we also have the other possibility when women go out and propose to men. So what would be your intuition? So which sex is favored by the system where men propose to women? Is it better for men or is it better for women? Men. Okay, so argument being, right, so they are the active side, right, so they are the ones who go out and propose. Right, so I've also seen the argument that it seems to be better for women, right, because they always improve through the execution of the algorithm, right? So they start out with some assignment and then they improve. Okay, so let's see which intuition is correct. Okay, so well, a given instance may have many stable matchings, right? So let's look at our kind of initial example. So one stable matching here would be to match Ian to Amy, John to Bella, and Kyle to Claire. So 2 guys get their most preferred matching, Kyle gets his worst option, right? And the other possibility would be to match Ian to Bella, John to Amy, Kyle to Claire again, right? So now guys get the second most preferred option, but women on the other hand get the most preferred option, right? So these are 2 distinct stable matchings, right? And one seems to favor guys. So here Ian and John get the first choice, Kyle gets the third, whereas women get the second choice. So Emmy and Bella get the second choice, Claire gets her last choice, as opposed to the other way around. So which of those stable matchings would be produced by Gale-Shapley? Right, so Gale-Shapley actually would run completely trivially here. Right, Ian would go out and propose to Emmy, right, so they're provisionally matched. John goes out and proposes to Bella, they're provisionally matched. Then Kyle tries his luck. He proposes to Emmy, gets rejected, she doesn't like him. He proposes to Bella, gets rejected, Bella doesn't like him. So he goes out and proposes to Claire, and that's the end of the algorithm. Right, so Gale-Shapley would actually give us this. Right, so the one of these two that favors guys. And of course, symmetrically, if it was the women who did the proposing, right, then Emmy would propose to John, Bella to Ian, and Claire would end up with Kyle. Right, so the proposing side in this example seems to have an advantage. Okay, so is that universal? Right, so another example we can ask, is, okay, so with Gale-Shapley as represented, it was sort of underdefined. So we said, okay, so at each point we pick an unmatched guy, so he goes out and proposes, right? We could pick different guys, right? So there may be several of them. Does the final outcome of Gale-Shapley depend on which of these guys we chose in a way around? Right, and it seems like it might, right? It's a complex enough structure, so potentially it might. Right, so can we even say about kind of how Gale-Shapley affects anything if the outcome of Gale-Shapley doesn't seem to be completely deterministic? Right, so what it always proposes is same matching. Okay, so let's try to answer that. Okay, so here's a definition. So it's a slightly funny definition. So we say that a woman is a valid partner for a man if there exists a stable matching where they are together. Right, if it's possible to match them together and then extend this matching so that everyone is matched, so that this man and this woman are together and the overall construction is stable. Right, and if that's possible, we say that the woman is a valid partner for that man. Right, so here, for instance, we have these two stable matchings. So this means that Emmy and Bella are valid partner for Ian, and they're both also valid partners for John. And Claire is the only valid partner for Kyle. Right, I say she's the only valid partner for Kyle. I'm implicitly assuming that these are the only two stable matchings. But you can check that this is the case. Right, these are the only two possibilities, and therefore Claire is the only valid partner for Kyle. Not necessarily Gale-Shapley, just what can happen universally. Okay, so now let me define. Okay, so that's my definition. So here's another funny definition. So man optimal matching. I say that, okay, man optimal matching is a matching where each man receives his best valid partner. Okay, this is a weird definition. I mean, why is it even a matching? Why can't two guys have the same woman as their best valid partner? Right? I mean, how is it even well defined? But let's run with it for a minute. Right? So let's suppose that, okay, so if we have this matching, each man receives his best valid partner. If that actually happens to be a matching, right, this is the best that guys can hope for. Right? If we are to choose some stable matching, right, so the best that a guy can hope for in a stable matching is his best valid partner by construction. Right? If he were to do any better, that wouldn't be a valid partner, so it would mean that the matching is actually not stable. Right? So this is the best that a guy can hope for. Okay, so here, okay, so the matching where each guy gets his best valid partner would be that one. Ian gets Emmy, John gets Bella, Kyle gets Claire. Claire is not his best possible partner, but she's his best valid partner. Okay, so now here's a theorem. Gale-Shapley, what Gale-Shapley outputs is actually that thing. It's the man optimal matching. Gale-Shapley gives each guy his best valid partner, the best he can hope for in any stable matching. Okay, so let's prove that. This is a slightly longer proof than the proofs we've seen before, but still short enough to go through in the remaining time. Okay, so the proof is by contradiction. Suppose some man is matched with someone who is not his best valid partner by Gale-Shapley. Okay, so we're running Gale-Shapley, kind of in some order, I don't care which order, right? And suppose some guy ended up in the end of the execution with someone who is not his best valid partner. Right, so then this means that in the execution of the algorithm, some man was rejected by a valid partner, right? So, because I mean, each guy has, each man has a bunch of valid partners, right? So if he didn't end up with his best valid partner, so in particular he was rejected by his best valid partner, right? And possibly before that he was rejected by his other valid partners. Well, no, not before that. Okay, so anyway, so it has to be the case that some man is rejected by a valid partner. Okay, so let's consider the first time in the execution of our algorithm when this unfortunate event happens. A guy is rejected by his best valid partner. Okay, so let's consider this sad moment. Let Y be the man rejected at that point, right? So Y, because this is what he says, right? So this is the guy rejected at that point by his best valid partner, and let A be the woman who rejects him at that point. Okay, first time in the execution of the algorithm, a man is rejected by his best valid partner, and now they have names, A and Y. Right? So she rejects Y. She does it for a reason. She rejects him in favor of some other guy Z. Right? So when I say he's rejected at that point, it's maybe because they were matched before and someone better came along, or he came to propose to her and got rejected. But yeah, so one way or other, this is what happened. Okay. So again, so this is just copying things from the previous slide. Time of first rejection by valid partner, and these are the names. Okay. So Y and A is Y's valid partner, right? So by the choice, A is Y's valid partner. Therefore, there exists abstractly, there exists a stable matching where they are together. Right? So there's a stable matching where Y and A are together. Right, and in that matching, it's a stable matching. So in that matching, Z is doing something else. Right, so Z is matched to some other woman B. Right, so the existence of that matching, this matching exists simply because A is a valid partner for A. So they are together in some stable matching. So let me take some such matching. Right, so in that matching, Z and A are together. Okay, let me try to get a contradiction out of it. Right, so let me try to argue that this matching is actually not stable. Okay. So I claim that at time t, Z has not been rejected by B, right? So t is this point in time, we are now considering very carefully. So at that time, Z has not been rejected by B. This is an event that hasn't happened. Maybe they're together, or maybe Z hasn't proposed by Z, but the event of rejection of Z by B has not happened. Why? Well, let's look at that matching, right? So that matching establishes for us that B is a valid partner for Z. They are together in some stable matching. So B is a valid partner for Z. Right, and the point in time t is the point of time of first rejection by valid partner, and it wasn't rejection of Z by B, it's some other event. Right, so before that point in time, that rejection of Z by B couldn't have happened. Okay, so at time t, Z has not been rejected by B, right? And therefore, Z has not yet proposed to B. Okay, why is that? Well, suppose Z has proposed to B in the past, right? And now at time t, okay, so at time t, Z is together with A. Okay, so let's think about it for a second. So suppose that Z has proposed to B in the past. Right, so now Z is the partner of A at this current moment. So why is that impossibility? Okay, so okay. Well, Z is this. If Z is with someone else, right? So if Z has proposed to be in the past, right? So if he's now with someone else, it means that he would have to be rejected by B, right? If Z proposed to be in the past and he hasn't been rejected to B, then he would still be with B, right? So therefore Z has not yet proposed to B, right? And that means that Z actually prefers A to B. If he's currently with A and he hasn't yet proposed to B, because he holds down his preference order, right? It means that he hasn't reached B as he was going down, right? So Z prefers A to B. But also we know that A prefers Z to Y. So how do we know that? Well, A prefers Z to Y because of what happened at time t. At time t, A rejected Y in favor of Z. She rejected Y, and her partner after that is Z. This means that she prefers Z to Y. Right, and therefore A and Z together prefer each other to their current partners in that matching. So therefore that matching is unstable. Right, so we assume that it was a stable matching. Right, and in that matching we identified a pair, AZ, that was unstable. Right, and therefore this is a contradiction. Okay, so again to recap, so because I somehow, okay, so I confused myself, but something trivial here, so let's go through it again slowly. Okay, so what happened? So we looked at the time of the first rejection by valid partner. We assumed that it was a rejection of Y by A, right, and it was a rejection in favor of Z. Right, and then we looked at that hypothetical stable matching where Y and A are together, which exists because A is a valid partner for Y, and in that matching Z was together with someone else. Right, and then we tried to argue that this matching is unstable. We tried to argue that it's unstable because of pair AZ. Right, so for that we have to argue two things: that A prefers Z to Y, and that Z prefers A to Y. So the fact that A prefers Z to Y is actually easy. Right, so this is because at this point A rejected Y in favor of Z. Right, so the more interesting part is that Z actually prefers A to B. Right, and why is that? Z prefers A to B because at that point he's together with A. Right, he couldn't be rejected by B at that point because B is his valid partner. Kind of rejections by valid partners is something that hasn't happened in our universe at some point. Right? So B is his valid partner, hasn't been rejected by B, and he is not together with B. Right? So therefore it means that he hasn't proposed to B. He is together with someone else, right? And he hasn't been rejected by B, so therefore he hasn't proposed to her. Right? And this means that B is below his current partner A in his preference list. Right? And therefore he prefers A to B. Okay, so that's the argument. So therefore, okay, so that's a contradiction. Therefore, rejections by valid partners don't happen. Right, so no guy is ever rejected by a valid partner. This means that when he gets to his first valid partner on his list, and that is his best valid partner, right, so that woman doesn't reject him. Right, so each guy ends up with a best valid partner. Okay, good. Right, okay, so that's good for men. It's not so good for women. So obviously, well, it cannot really be optimal to both sides as we've seen in our 3x3 example. But it comes, kind of, men optimality comes at the expense of women in a very, very strong sense. So we defined men optimal assignment in the same fashion we can define women pessimal assignment. Right, so that's the assignment that gives each woman her worst valid partner. Among all guys she can be matched with in a stable matching, that's the worst guy. Right, and yeah, guess what? That's what Gale-Shapley gives us. Gale-Shapley outputs the woman pessimal matching. And the proof is actually kind of like the previous proof, but actually simpler because it uses the previous fact. Okay, so suppose Gale-Shapley actually treats a woman better than we predict. So Gale-Shapley matches a woman to a guy who is not her worst valid partner. So suppose her worst valid partner is some other guy B. Right, so A prefers Z to Y. Right? A prefers Z to Y because Y is her worst valid partner and Z is not. Right, so Gale-Shapley produces a stable matching. Right, and since A is matched to Z in the output of that algorithm, Z is a valid partner for her. Right, Z is a valid partner for her, Y is the worst valid partner, so A prefers Z to Y. Right, okay. So if Y is her worst valid partner, there is a stable matching with A and Y in it. Right, so again in that matching, B is matched to someone else. So I was sort of replicating the previous argument. So A prefers, and so now again we'll try to argue that this matching is in fact not stable. So in that matching, Y is with A, Z is with someone else. Right, so we know that A actually prefers Z to Y. Right, so why does Z prefer A to his partner? Right, and this is because Gale-Shapley outputs the man-optimal matching. Right, so Gale-Shapley matches A to Z. Right, so A is his best valid partner. Right, and B is also his valid partner because of that matching. Right, so therefore he prefers A to B, and so A and Z is unstable. Right, so Gale-Shapley is man optimal, woman pessimal, right, and So in a way, okay, so what does it tell us in practical terms? Having the initiative is good, right? So being the proposing side is actually good for the welfare of the proposing side, right? So in case you're wondering about those medical school admissions, so internships, kind of matching graduates, matching students to hospitals, right? So this is actually run as a system where students propose. I mean, students don't literally propose, kind of both sides submit their rankings, but it's run as Gale-Shapley with students at the proposing side, kind of to make it optimal for students rather than hospitals, for human rather than entities, right? And I believe that this is the right approach. But okay, so short, like, real life lesson is that initiative matters, initiative helps. Okay, so let me stop now here. So we have 1 more hour, which is a tutorial, and it will cover a little bit of hedonic games, a little bit of Gale-Shapley, and then possibly also phase division, depending on how things go. Unlikely, right? Okay, so I'm handing over to New here, so I'm done.